So let's talk about the Cutie Mark Crusaders. When the CMC were first introduced, I wasn't really a fan. It took me a while to understand why exactly that was. I think at first I thought it was because they felt like a distraction from the adult characters I cared more about. But even back in those early days, I was more than okay with giving Spike the occasional spotlight, and was already anticipating the Celestia-focused episode that we still haven't received. No, my underlying problem with the CMC had much more to do with their core concept, and the overly simplified and frequently frustrating way in which it was presented. Now, cutie marks in and of themselves are a decent enough idea, a symbolic representation of an individual's self, their essence, something abstract and personal. It's actually kinda neat. The problem came with the explanation we received for them in the show, particularly with the linking of them to that often repeated phrase, special talent. Partially because this always kind of felt to me like we were defining individuals solely by their occupation or base function in society, which doesn't really agree with me. Mostly though it was because, despite the insistence otherwise, a cutie mark doesn't seem to represent a special talent at all. Case in point, look at Applejack's cutie mark story. Nowhere do we see a display of talent of any sort. It is entirely about her figuring out her place in things. And though there is naturally some overlap between figuring that out and realizing something that they're good at, all of the other stories are about that too. Rarity and Rainbow Dash, for instance, already knew the things that they were skilled at, but just needed that special gratifying moment to confirm to them that this was in fact their true calling. Simply put, special talent does not equate to purpose in life. But for the CMC early on, it was always presented like it does. Oh, you just need to find what you're good at and then you'll have your cutie mark. Sure, the older ponies always were quick to interject with the you just need to be patient thing, but the favorite approach for the CMC remained to try a bunch of things until you find something you're good at. Not helping things was showstoppers basically screaming, look, these are their talents, they're just too silly to realize it. Once they do, they'll have their cutie marks. It felt insultingly simplistic. Basically, the entire modus operandi of the CMC is exactly the failed method Rainbow Dash put Apple Bloom through in Call of the Cutie. Try as many things as possible and just hope you're good at something. This is asinine. Few people are just immediately excellent at whatever they try. It's actually in fact sending a poor message to the children watching. Just keep trying all sorts of things and quit if you aren't some instant prodigy. It's always look at all the silly things the CMC are trying, but that's not how the world works. In almost every case, to become good at something, you're going to have to stick with it and not just move on to the next thing. You need to put in the effort and the practice and just come to really understand it. And because of this, episodes like the Cutie Pox, Showstoppers, and Call of the Cutie are among my least favorite in the entire series. There was a point in early Season 1 where I didn't think I'd ever like the CMC. Even as we started to get episodes which fleshed them out as characters and made me like them individually, like Sister of Social for Sweetie Belle, I remained wholly unconvinced by the idea of the Crusaders as a collective unit. Then we got Ponyville Confidential, and for once the CMC actually did stick with just one thing in an attempt to get their marks. Moreover, they were actually good at it. The conflict came instead from their efforts proving harmful to others, and they themselves acknowledged that in the end, that though they had a talent for it, continuing to do something that would hurt other ponies was not something they would want a cutie mark for. That was the turning point. And pretty much since that point, I started to gradually embrace the CMC as the writers became smarter with it all. Twilight Time showed the CMC finally willing to stick with things that interested them and try and master them, whether it would lead to their marks or not. Bloom and Gloom and Appaloosa's Most Wanted then went more into the uncertainties of a cutie mark, both before and after one has been received, the latter episode paving the way for the real brilliance. When the CMC received their marks in Crusaders of the Lost Mark, it was everything it needed to be. Sure, the appearances of the marks themselves was something to get used to, but the idea of them, it was perfect. I said it back in my Newbie Dash review, but if Scootaloo had just gotten a scooter on her flank after 5 seasons, it would have just been aggravating. Apple Bloom is good at design and she also likes to brew potions, but these skills and talents are not her purpose in life. The satisfaction she discovers in helping others understand their marks along with her friends, it's something more fulfilling than anything she personally excels at. It represented a complete turnaround from the earlier days, and as glorious as that was, I never really anticipated that come Season 6, even more would be done to subvert things on that front. But then, lo and behold, Episode 19 of Season 6, The Fault in Our Cutie Marks came about, and yeah, here it is. This episode, it's like a straight-up refutation of everything the CMC were about in their first few outings. I mean, just look at this. The episode plainly acknowledges that being good at random things you try does not equal finding your place in life. Because, in complete inverse of what was the CMC fashion, Gabby is good at everything, and yet none of it is the key to her cutie mark. Granted, she wasn't ever going to achieve a cutie mark in the traditional sense, being a griffin and all, but that's not a distinction that translates to much in the abstract. What matters is, in the end, the CMC have gotten her symbolic cutie mark, and it's done by reconsidering their approach and finally recognizing that earning a cutie mark is more than finding a talent. And to see that all these 6 seasons later, it's almost as satisfying as Crusaders of the Lost Mark was. In that episode, the CMC found their marks and a calling in life which I can get behind, but here I feel like they finally understand what a cutie mark really means, and that alone is enough to catapult this episode into the upper strata of Season 6 episodes for me. After the simply decent On Your Marks and the lackluster The Cart Before the Ponies, this was the CMC episode we needed this season. Unfortunately, it's going to end up being divisive almost entirely on account of the new cast addition of the week. Gabby the Griffin is not a character who's going to work for everyone. She's on the other side of Pinky in terms of raw enthusiasm. She's huggy and physical and good at everything. I can see her attracting a fair amount of disdain for fans with low tolerances for such things who will just find her grating, and that's bound to sour their opinions of the episode. Others, like me, will find her irresistibly cute and a lot of fun. I actually really like her because she is herself what allows this really worthwhile story to unfold. It takes a personality like hers to create a situation like this, where the pressure is on and the characters find themselves forced to promise the impossible. And as I said before, her being a natural at everything is what allows this idea that talent does not equal cutie mark to be presented as plainly as it is. She also creates a wonderful counterpoint for the CMC. Actually, I wonder if that isn't the full intention of her character. Good at everything she tries in her montage, while the CMC always failed everything in theirs. All youthful zeal and naive wonderment, while the CMC have become increasingly more mature and grounded as the seasons go by. Even the name Gabby is something of a connection to the CMC's past, being part of the nom de plume they wrote under in Ponyville Connection. Though admittedly that could just be pure coincidence rather than a brilliant stroke of the writer. Yeah, I can't help it. I love Gabby. Then again, I've been eager to see more Griffins in the show pretty much since Gilda's introduction, so getting another one, and one with so much personality, it's something I'm very much on board with. It's really cool, in fact, to see an effort made to connect this to what we saw in The Legend of Griffinstone. It makes me want to see her and Gilda in the same episode, honestly, working together to make Griffinstone a better place. Even with Gilda being nicer now, it'd be a wonderful tale of contrast, I think. This is writer Ed Valentine's 4th episode, and his 3rd so far focused on the CMC. Considering that, I'm guessing he has something of an affinity for them, and I'm all for the combination, as he's proven that he knows these characters very well. Even his less than successful The Cart Before the Ponies suffered mainly from how the older ponies were written. The CMC felt more or less right. This one was strong, with plenty of cute CMC dialogue and fun little moments for all of them. It's also rather clear, I think, that Scootaloo is becoming something of a pet character for Valentine. He already gave her some of her best moments in Flight to the Finish, and made a clear attempt not to betray how her relationship with Rainbow Dash should be captured in The Cart Before the Ponies. Now he's given her another particularly poignant moment as she relates Gabby's impossible desire for a cutie mark to her own likely hopeless dreams of flying. This is a nice touch. In doing so, he makes it personal, where it could just be the CMC reacting as Gabby pushes them along. By making Scootaloo the emotional heart of the episode, he manages to make it all mean a bit more. The stakes feel more real. It's more emotionally resonant. Could it be accused of milking Scootaloo's disability for additional feels? Maybe, but it's hard to say the correlation that Scootaloo herself draws in the episode is anything but a fair one. Instead, I think it's refreshing to see that she still really dwells on this stuff, even after Flight to the Finish had her made strides towards accepting her limitations. It's what makes her a complex character. And considering Valentine's done the best job of tapping into this side of Scootaloo, I say we keep going to him for Scootaloo episodes in the future. He seems to know what he's doing there. He also continues to impress on the songwriting front. It's clearly something he enjoys throwing in there. So far, all of his episodes have had songs, something no other writer with so many episodes can claim. They've all been pretty great too. He clearly has a knack for coming up with lyrics for Daniel Ingram to set to music. That said, for me, while Find the Purpose in Your Life is solid and a lot of fun, it's probably actually the least of the 4 songs Valentine has had a hand in so far. Glass of Water was just so novel, while Hearts as Strong as Horses had that great march-like rhythm to it, and Derby Racers has that infectious chorus and is just so much fun to sing along with. This one is catchy and appealing, but it doesn't have as much to distinguish it really beyond the fact that it's sung by the guest character of the episode, which admittedly is something of a treat, especially given that Gabby's voice actress, Erin Matthews, does have a nice voice. It's a good song, and I really enjoy it while watching the episode, but I don't know, it's just not something that really sticks with me or demands I listen to it on its own. I don't really have much to say beyond that. I'm actually rather lucky I had so much to say about Cutie Marks and the CMC in general at the start, or else this would have been a rather short review. Before I bring this to a close, however, there are just a few stray and admittedly more irreverent observations that I'd like to make, which don't really affect my overall opinion of the episode. What exactly is a Ponysaurus? Is this some kind of pony dinosaur or like a prehistoric pony? If it's the former, how exactly does that work? Does evolution work differently in Equestria? If it's the latter, that's more understandable, though it makes the name a bit misleading. How do Petunia's parents know so little about what her cutie mark means? Yes, it's likely they weren't there when she got it, but shouldn't they have some idea about it regardless, just from asking her the story? Getting a cutie mark, we know it's a big deal in Equestria, and the parents get like super proud. And especially considering that they have concerns about it, you'd think they'd be trying to figure out everything they could about how she got it in the first place. Then again, I suppose it could be a troubleshoot situation where the moment was itself hard to interpret. I like what the Petunia scene implies for the CMC, that they're presenting what they do for others now as something of a job, with ponies who are in need calling on them for help. That said, it does kind of feel a bit extreme to go from,
well, it's looking like cutie mark problems are few and far between. And what if we never find another one?
and on your marks, to,
Yep, everywhere you look, there's a pony we've helped find a perfect.
here in this one. What exactly did Gilda write Rainbow Dash, I wonder? Considering how unused to being a good friend she is, that's gotta be delightfully awkward and potentially adorable. Shame we didn't get to hear it. Does Zecora come Season 6 only exist to make brief cameos during the song montages and CMC episodes? We could really use more of her. First physics and now pre-cal. Does Ed Valentine have entirely the wrong idea about what the Schoolhouse Pony should be learning, or is Cheerilee really stepping up her curriculum of late? Also, math is apparently the one thing Gabby isn't good at, considering that's clearly a negative cosine graph as opposed to a sine graph. That the CMC are so blindsided by someone just painting a cutie mark on their flank is kind of hilarious to me. Seriously, why did they never think about that in the earlier episodes? Seems a lot easier and less prone to disaster than trying to magic up fakes as in Call of the Cutie and the Cutie Pox. Finally, I don't know whether to be grateful or sorry that we didn't get to see Twilight's sheer delight at history being made dashed to pieces. Really makes you wonder how the three of them broke the truth to her. And that's all I got for this one. It was a really worthwhile episode, fun, engaging, surprisingly not so predictable, and featuring one of my favorite overall messages ever from the show. It gave us a character who I really like, and it did very well by the CMC, especially Scootaloo. Together it all makes for the best CMC episode of the season, and one of the top episodes period. This has been a RarityDash review, thanks for watching, and see you soon.